On behalf of the Punjab Information Technology Board, I would like to welcome you all to the 4th session of the CEO Talk Series on IT Entrepreneurship. Today, we are fortunate to have in our midst Mr. Murad Akhter, CEO of Tintash. Mr. Akhter, a graduate of Stanford University, has over 7 years of experience in product management and software development in Silicon Valley's high-tech industry. Prior to Tintash, he worked at Apple Computers on flagship products such as the company's first line of 64-bit systems, as well as its transition from PowerPC chips to Intel's multi-core processors. He later worked on Jukebox and VoIP applications for the ultra-mobile PC platform at Microsoft before starting Tintash in 2007. It's a pleasure to have you with us, sir. To begin proceedings, I would like to call Umar Farooq for recitation from the Holy Quran.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم أرأيت الذي يكذب بالدين فذلك الذي يدع اليتيم ولا يحض على طعام المسكين فويل للمصلين الذين هم على صلاتهم ساهون الذين هم يراءون ويمنعون الماعون صدق الله العظيم.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Mr. Murad Akhter.
Hi everyone, can you hear me okay? So before we get started, what I'd like is just to get a sense of what the audience is, what kind of background you have. Could you raise your hand as I basically ask these questions? So how many of you are recent graduates from university? Okay. How many are currently working in the IT industry as engineers or in some other capacity? Okay. How many of you have had a chance to work outside of Pakistan? All right. And within Pakistan, outside of Lahore and Punjab? Okay, great. How many of you are running your own ventures? Okay. And how many of you want to run your own ventures at some point? All right, great. So in the right room for sure for that. Like a lot of you, I work in the IT sector. I've worked as a software engineer, and I've also worked as a project manager. I also have worked in Lahore and outside of Pakistan and have some exposure to different processes and different sort of cultural norms as people run their own ventures. Entrepreneurship, the way I come to understand it, is something that is a part of human nature. It's not something that is taught in school. It's not something that someone can teach you. However, you can learn it by working with someone else as an entrepreneur. You can definitely learn the skills that matter the most, and you can absorb them, you can observe them in other people, and you can see if you have the same spark or not. Today what I'll do is I'll walk you through our story. The company I'm running these days is called Tintash. So I'll walk you through how we started. By no means do I consider myself a very successful entrepreneur yet. I think the day you could start considering yourself that, it's time to perhaps move into a different position, perhaps as a mentor, an angel investor, a venture capitalist, and let other entrepreneurs take over. So I feel entrepreneurship is basically a process of making mistakes, learning from your mistakes, and improving yourself. So every single day you come into work, you should think of the few mistakes you're going to make that day and how you will notice them, how you will come to realize that these were mistakes, learn from them, and have a better tomorrow. Okay. We'll get into some of these discussions perhaps in the Q&A session at the end. Let me walk you through our story a little. Okay, I think this is the wrong slide. Is this slide So, Timdash started as an idea out of Stanford, I think, when I was about to graduate. A couple of alumni, friends of mine, one of whom was a roommate of mine, we thought, it would be really good at that time, 2007, to explore a different platform and try to focus on it. And we thought mobile was a platform of the future back then. And we felt that if we were to innovate in any space, that would be the best place to try. After we got started, today our focus is mostly on iOS, iPhone, and Android development. Those are the two platforms where we work. Our core business is to offer game development services to US-based companies and publishers, game developers outside of the US as well. Mostly we focus on trying to provide those services. We do our own product development too. There are a lot of companies that are in this space now in Pakistan. We try to think of ourselves as a little unique in the sense that we are focused on games more than others. And because of that, we've had to create a team that is made up of more than engineers. It's a traditional IT industry company. However, our success is dependent on the creativity and the originality of the people we hire. So it is not just their technical skill, but also what else they bring to the table. So we try to hire people who are all-rounders for that purpose. The main people who run the company include myself and my co-founder, Murad. Murad also had a very similar background as myself. He went to LUMS for his undergraduate, then went to Stanford for his master's. We went at different times, so we didn't run into each other over there. We ran into each other when we were on our way back to Pakistan. Jazid was a friend of mine also at Stanford. He was a few years behind me. He also moved back to Pakistan at a different time than I did. And we basically met when we were back here. Rahman is our BD director now. So, in terms of the history of the company, we founded, we got founded, we started up as, the roots of the idea took shape in Silicon Valley. But around that same time, I had to come back to Lahore, mostly for family reasons. And also because I felt that at that time, there was going to be very little risk for me if I wanted to change and if I wanted to try something new. I had just finished my master's, so I could come and I could explore something new without it affecting my career in a very negative way. When we started in 2007, there was no iPhone, there was no Android OS platform. What was the dominant platform in the day was this technology called Flashlight. Flashlight was essentially Flash, but it was made for mobile devices. It was simpler. It was supposed to run more efficiently, and there were several major handset manufacturers who were really behind it. One of them was Nokia. So we felt that Flash was a technology that would be disruptive. It would change the mobile ecosystem. The reason for that was that it allowed a solution for a very major problem back then, which was how to make your application or your game run across all these different handsets. If you remember, a few years back, smartphones didn't really exist as a category. You had phones that were capable, but they had smaller screens. They didn't have as fast processors, and the dominant programming language used was Java on those handsets. At the same time, because the screen resolutions were all different, there were many manufacturers, each with a lot of different handsets. Even though you wrote your application in Java, you still had to customize it for every handset that you wanted it to support. There was no one single dominant player. Imagine the same thing, say, on the desktop. Imagine if instead of Windows and Macs, you had 100 different OS versions out there, and you had to sell your products on them. That was basically the mobile ecosystem back then. What Flash provided was basically a unified experience because it was based on vector graphics rather than bitmap. The idea of vector graphics was that the graphics could be defined with equations, and you could basically maintain the image quality whether you reduced the image in size or if you increased it to a much larger size. Right? So our assumption was, if we bet on a disruptive technology, by the idea of disruption being that some technology that will change the ecosystem, that will change what people are doing these days, and will eventually grow to be the dominant platform. If we start focusing on it, we can grow with the technology. When the technology expands, we will also expand and grow as a company. We didn't have any funding. I basically had some savings from working for a few years in the Valley. And my friends, my co-founders, were willing to pool and put in some money into the venture. And that's how we got started. We basically said, okay, let's put our savings into this, and let's try to get some office space, let's try to hire a few people, and let's try to explore this market. Often the story of startups in the Valley or in the US is that there's an idea that they want to explore. They know the product they want to build. But if you hear their stories, they'll often say that we didn't really discover the problem we wanted to solve till we actually started working on another problem. And that's true for a lot of Pakistani product-based companies too. And so we started with this assumption that we don't know the problem yet, but we know where there are going to be lots of problems. We know on the mobile platform, there are going to be hundreds of problems to solve. So we start thinking about it, we'll start noticing the problems and solving them. So as phase 2 came up, we basically started running out of money. If you bootstrap something, you obviously have a very limited amount of money that won't last you for too long, right? And so at that time, we had to decide whether we would raise money externally from investors, or we would try to generate it ourselves. And we went the route of trying to generate it ourselves for a lot of reasons, some of which I think speakers before have mentioned as well. The more you can wait to raise money, the more value you can create in advance, the less percent of your company you have to give away to an investor. Similarly, you have a lot more freedom in deciding what you want to do if it is your own money that you are spending versus someone else's, right? And then in Pakistan, obviously, it is much more challenging to find investment than it is in the US or other places. Though investment in general is hard to find unless you have a very good, team in place and you already have lots of other details worked out. So what did we do? At this point in time, we thought, okay, let's try to investigate areas of revenue generation. So we started offering Flash development services to external companies. Around this time, the Facebook SDK was released, and so Facebook opened up its platform to external developers. You could at this point try to build something on Facebook, and lots of people were seeing tremendous growth. They were seeing viral growth where